Good morning. We didn't get through chapter 38 of Genesis yesterday, so we'll add that with chapters 39 and 40. Chapter 38 is a little bit of a deviation. We've been learning about Joseph and how Joseph was sold into slavery yesterday, and they brought, I didn't talk about it, how they brought his coat back to his father and told him that the wild animals had eaten it, and I mean, I didn't quite get to that part, but, Joseph had been sold, and Judah was the one who had said, well, what profit is it for us if we kill him? Let's sell him and, get some money for him. And it shows in chapter 38, Judah, this one that had spoken so that they didn't kill Joseph, goes down away from his brothers and settles in a different area. And he marries a woman, and she had, his first son was Er, and then she had a son, Onan, and then she had a son, Selah. And when got old enough to marry, then Judah saw that, he married a woman named Tamar. But it says, had done evil in God's sight, so he died, did not have children. So Judah wants his brother Onan to do the brotherly deed and to father a child with Tamar, so that there would be an offspring, an heir for And of course, Onan doesn't want to do that, and he goes out of his way not to. And so Tamar then, goes to live in her father's house. And it says then in verse 12, in the course of time, the wife of Judah died, and when Judah's time of mourning was over, he went up to his sheep shearers. And along the way, he sees this woman sitting along the road, and he thinks that she is a prostitute. And he asks her then, to do the deed with him. And she agrees, but she wants, he says he'll give her a sheep from the flock. But she wants to pledge to know that he will bring it back. And so he gives her signet ring and a cord and the staff in his hand. And then after this, Tamar is found to be pregnant, and she goes back, and then word comes to Judah later that, his daughter-in-law, Tamar, has played the whore, they say. I mean, she's pregnant, and Judah is upset by that, and he's going to put her to death. And he says, well, who is it? Who did this? And then she brings out his ring and the cord and his staff, and then he realizes that he's been caught. And she has twins. And so we have that story thrown in here about Judah and these twins that are born to Tamar. And then chapter 39, again, we go back to the story of Joseph in captivity. He was taken down, it says, to Egypt, to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, a captain of the guard, an Egyptian who had bought him from the Ishmaelites. And, Joseph, this robe that they had taken back to his father was, the coat of many colors. And so this Joseph, we know this story of what goes on with Joseph and how he finds favor with the Egyptians, with the Pharaoh, and he is put in charge of, or maybe not, but he's put in charge of everything of his master's household. And because his master, his owner, saw that, it says that he saw that the Lord was with Joseph, and that things that Joseph did prospered. So he put Joseph in charge of everything, made him overseer over his house and all that he had. And then we find some more problems coming up in the middle of verse 7. This Egyptian's wife looks at Joseph and sees that he is handsome and good looking. And she casts eyes on him and she says, come, sleep with me. And he said, I can't do that to my master. That would be wrong. It's just, no, I won't do that. And she just continues to badger him and to pester him. And he continues to say no. He says, how could I do this great wickedness and sin against God? You know, so it isn't just a sin against his master, but a sin against God. He understands that. And so many people today, you know, don't think about the sins and that sins are against God. And so then this woman gets upset. And when there are no other men around, no one else in the household, she corners Joseph. And she again wants him to sleep with her, to lie with her. And he says, no, I can't do that. And as she grabs a hold of his tunic that he has then, he runs off and leaves his tunic in her hands. So she tells a little bit of a lie, just a little bit of a lie, yeah. She tells her husband that, you know, Joseph raped her and, you know, and all this. And so Joseph gets thrown in prison. In verse 20, Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he remained there in prison. But the Lord was with him. Verse 21 says, the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the eyes of the chief jailer. And so he does well, even in prison. You know, God continues to bless him and watch over him. And that's a lesson for us too, that no matter what our situation is, you know, God doesn't desert us. God is there. I mean, in times of joy, times of trouble, times of intense pain, it doesn't matter. God does not desert us. God is always there. And so Joseph, you know, has continued to make the best of a bad situation with God's help. And it says the chief jailer paid no heed to anything that was in Joseph's care because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. And then verse 40, or chapter 40 comes, and the cupbearer of the king and the baker offended the Lord, the king of Egypt. The Pharaoh was angry with these and threw them into prison as well. And they, you know, were in the same prison as Joseph. And these, you know, the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he waited on them, and they continued in custody. And then one night, they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of Egypt. They were confined in prison. They each had a dream. When Joseph came in the morning, it says he saw they were troubled. He asked them, why are your faces so downcast? We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them. And Joseph interprets the dreams. And the first one for the cupbearer is favorable, that, you know, the king will restore him to his position. The second dream is not so good, because that dream says that, you know, Pharaoh will, Pharaoh will behead this guy. He's going to, you know, he ends up, you know, tells us he is hung. You know, the interpretation is this: the 3 branches are 3 days, and within 3 days, you know. And so this, you know, this baker had heard this good news for the cupbearer, thinking more of the same for me, but what a disappointment. And both of these things happened. They came to be, and on the 3rd day of Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast, it says, for all. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his cupbearing, and he placed the cups in Pharaoh's hand. With the chief baker, he hanged. And then verse 23 is, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And, you know, it was, you know, Joseph had interpreted his dream. But we know what this leads to, because we know the story, and we know that later on Joseph is called to interpret the Pharaoh's dream, and we get into that tomorrow as we look at chapter 41 and on. But one of the things that I get from the story of Jacob, who became Israel, of Joseph, who now was sold into slavery, and then put into prison, you know, just treated wrongly so many ways. He always looked at the good side of things, and God was watching out for him. I mean, that's a part of it. You know, it says that God was watching out for him. But we don't hear that he starts to cry in his soup, you know. He takes it in stride and makes the best of the situation. And that's what we really need to do every day. Make the very best of whatever situation we find ourselves in. And again, this day, something just tipped over. This day and always, may God richly bless you.